It's time for the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer and Bruce Zeman.
Shoots! He scores!
And now, with a trip around the National Hockey League, here's Jim and Bruce.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Full Press Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, voice of Full Press Hockey, rocking and rolling alongside my tag team partner, Bruce Zeman of Vox Media. He's the best NHL analyst in the business. Bruce, what's up, buddy?
Hey, good to talk to you again, Jim. 2 times in one day. Again, we did it this morning on WBTK. Now we've got the podcast going, and glad to be back with you.
Always glad to be back with you. And we got a lot to talk about, and we got a lot of things to expand on. And we have to start with the major headlines when we go into our Around the NHL segment. And it starts with Fight Night in Madison Square Garden, the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils. That's what everybody's talking about. The brawl, the war to settle the score, whatever you want to call it, the rivalry. Curtis McDermott, Matt Rempe, yeah, that was the main event attraction. But 8 players were ejected from the game. There were 6-7 fights. It needed to happen regardless of what you think, regardless if you think it's bad for the sport, whether it was a clown show, whatever, people getting upset. It needed to happen because, frankly, it should have happened the last game.
You're absolutely right, and I think if folks think that it shouldn't have happened, you might not understand the game, because if you played the game or you play the game like you and I both do, Jim, we know that you're 100% right. It should have happened last time, and I think there was really more at stake for New Jersey than there was for the Rangers because they've not had a good season, and I know a lot of their fans, you and I included, putting on our hats as fans for a second, expected some type of pushback last night based on what's happened previously. And for New Jersey, what's really been a very disappointing and, quite frankly, embarrassing season.
Yeah, it has been. And it's been an embarrassing season in all parts. It's been an embarrassing season, not only on the ice, but this team's been pushed around. They have no answer for it. And everything was boiling over. Look, we know what happened. Matt Rempe's had a couple of hits, taken out a couple of guys. Nathan Bastian, Jonas Siegenthaler, he got suspended last time. He's been played 5 minutes and 3 seconds, had 47 penalty minutes, and has been ejected 3 times. Look, you knew it was coming, and as we say, it's a build. It's like with it being WrestleMania week and WrestleMania on this weekend, I want to bring that aspect into it because, yes, it was built like a wrestling pay-per-view. You had the storyline, Matt Rempe, the babyface at Madison Square Garden, Curtis McDermott coming in. We know what happened. Devils fans wanted to see it. Everybody wanted to see that main event fight. And look, when Travis Green, the head coach, says, well, it should have happened last time, and he's right, and he doesn't understand why Peter Laviolette's all upset. He started the 4th line. Now, Peter Laviolette has every right to either match it or don't match it. But the fact of the matter is he decides to match it, and Curtis Lazar and Jimmy Vesey start things, and therefore everybody else gets ejected. And look, it was a good fight, and it needed to happen, and tensions were boiling over because if it didn't happen then, it was going to happen later in the game, and players don't forget what happened. And it because of what happened last game, where Rempe takes out Siegenthaler, the referees jump in and don't allow McDermott to get the revenge, and then Rempe waves goodbye with his hand, that's a problem. And that was disrespectful to the game and to McDermott. And everybody can say the Devils, are losers, poor hockey, poor choice. Remember, it's the same Rangers fans and the same Rangers media that were calling out Tom Wilson why he didn't fight Ryan Reeves when Reeves came to the New York Rangers. So there's a code in hockey, and it happened, and it started 2 seconds into the game Wednesday night.
Well, again, and you were absolutely right. I mean, you shouldn't be surprised if you're the Rangers coach. You should not be surprised at all that happened. It had to happen. Again, for New Jersey, I think there was a lot more at stake. I think we said this morning on my show up here in Vermont, that this was something that the New Jersey players just had to have happen in order to have any type of respect in the league or in their room. Because it was really they have had a terrible season, and they really had no answer for the Rangers' physicality. And the thing with the waving and the gesturing, I mean, come on, this isn't a men's bear league. And we'll see how long that goes on, because I think somebody's going to clean his clock at some point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand why the Rangers didn't want him to do it last game, but that's when stuff needed to happen. And he did get suspended. And look, everybody, whether you like it, you don't like it, it was going to happen. It shouldn't have come as a shock to anybody. It shouldn't have surprised anybody.
Oh.
It's not an embarrassment. Stuff like this needs to happen. And I brought it up on WVTK on the Thursday morning show. Jason Zucker was traded from the Arizona Coyotes to the Nashville Predators. When the Florida Panthers came into town, he did not forget what Nick Cousins did to him. And Nick Cousins answered the bell, and they fought. Rempe was going to have to answer the bell, whether it was a line brawl, whether it was just one-on-one. He was going to have to answer the bell, and he did.
Yeah, he did. And, I watched the entire game, and when I was watching the pregame show, you could just tell that something was going to happen. And it would have been nice if New Jersey would have won that game last night, because their season is essentially over. But this team has a ton of questions going into the offseason, because they're not going to make the playoffs. And, just my own frustration and some of the social media comments and some of the things that people are saying. I don't know, maybe just because I've been doing this for so long, like I don't understand how Devils fans in particular, I don't understand how people could think that the Devils upper management has no accountability for the season, because that's why the season is a loss. You're going to have injuries, but you know what? That happens for every team in the league. And the other teams in the league don't use that as an excuse, okay? Your GM knew you needed a goalie last year. You didn't get one, and the season's lost. And he is absolutely accountable for that. And quite frankly, I think he should be on the clock.
He probably will be on the clock, and I 100% agree with you. Look, Travis Green said Tuesday night that this team is a young team. Everybody knows it. But that's not an excuse anymore with expectations coming into the season. This team was hurt, yes. But you didn't replace guys that were hurt in this lineup. You had money to use. You didn't use it. You didn't make the trades when you should have made the trades. You had to get a goaltender at the beginning of the year, and everybody knew it. And you didn't. You took a roll of the dice. Why didn't things change 15, 20 games into the season? Why did it wait so long? Why was everything done on a reactionary moment instead of being proactive? Because you look at it, teams that were proactive, Oilers, Kings, the Wild and Blues to an extent, are in the playoff race right now. Even the Islanders, they made a coaching change, and they're still in the mix. New Jersey waited, and they take a step back for it. And yes, their season's pretty much over. They're not making the playoffs. You've lost 3 games in a row. You lost to 2 teams you probably shouldn't have lost to. And again, holding third period leads is a problem.
Well, there's a leadership problem. That's what I think. And I think that there is really, and I mean this sincerely, I think that there's got to be a lot of soul searching, not only in the upper management, but in that locker room come the offseason. And you got to figure out what you're going to do, because they look like a bunch of guys playing in a beer league.
Yeah, I agree. I think they do. I mean, look, these guys are making stupid turnovers. They're making bad plays in their own zone. They're making bad plays in the offensive zone. They're not covering anybody. Again, another lead slips away. Tuesday night, you're in control against Pittsburgh. You've won 7 straight against that team. And then you just lay an egg in the third period. Again, there's bad bounces, but you got to get the puck out of the zone. Making stupid plays, bad decisions, poor decisions. It's just been a year-long theme. And look, I know everybody wants to get on Meyer and Siegenthaler for what they said, but he's right. They do play scared when they have the lead. They do play scared when it gets tight, because they're afraid to make a mistake, and they're afraid to lose hockey games. When you know what their game is, when they're going in a transition game, they're one of the best teams in the league. But they don't do it all the time, and when teams take that away, they don't know how to adjust and know how to play. And they don't know how to stay with their game. And that's a problem. They don't play 60 minutes.
Well, I mean, there's so many different areas you can look at from the upper management. And you know who I actually feel bad for in this situation that New Jersey has? I don't think Travis Green will be back next year. I think he's doing the best he can. I think he's been put into a terrible situation, and he's trying to really do damage control. But and I never, ever thought I would say this. You and I have talked privately about this, but maybe this team needs somebody like a John Tortorella to come in and just kind of lay down the law, because there are some star players that need to be sat.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best option right now might be the Chief, Craig Berube. I think that would be a good choice for this team. You lay down the law. You tell your star players, hey, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be sat instead of always being the kids, because there's too much pond hockey going around, especially with the Hughes brothers. I know they like to play a certain way, but can't do that right now. Look, Ken Hitchcock even reined in Mike Modano. So if Mike Modano can learn how to play two-way hockey and still be a Hall of Fame player, guys can adjust and be good players. Look, the Devils have issues, right? They've had issues all year. This is nothing new. You can see that. And yes, when you lose two defensemen 2 seconds into the game, it doesn't help matters, because Luke Hughes is playing 32 minutes and shouldn't be playing 32 minutes because everybody else got kicked out of the game. But that's no excuse still, because he's a good defenseman, but he's still young and he still makes mistakes like Nemec does. But guys are still not understanding how to break out of your own zone. It's the same issues, and I wrote it. I didn't finish writing it, but I wrote it. And it's the same issues that, again, Scott Stevens addressed when he was on the NHL Network breaking down the Devils in 2019-20. He said the same stuff. Guys are impatient, don't look to where they pass the puck, just want to throw it to open space, and nobody's there. And you're seeing it. They just look to just make a play, and nobody's there, and then the puck stays in the zone, and they can't get out, and the puck's in the net.
I put my hands up because I've been saying this. I think I've been one of the first analysts. I've been saying this for 3 years that they need to get him, and it's really. I tell you what, I would not want to be in those off-season meetings, because I'm not really sure where you start first. But I do think you need a no BS coach to come in there and just kind of lay down the law. I think you need to bring Scott Stevens in. That's not anything new. And I think you've got to get a number one goaltender. And I hate to say this, but if Devils fans think that they're going to get Markstrom or Ullmark or Saros and not going to give up something, buckle up, because it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, exactly. They have to. I mean, look, they need a number one goalie. Jake Allen's done all he could, but it's too little too late for this team. They couldn't sustain winning. And again, I'm not looking to call out anybody. But I was watching NHL Network on Friday, and I don't know who the analyst was, and I'm not going to name names here, but they're like, oh, well, New Jersey's kind of in it. I can see them going on a 7-8 game winning streak. And I'm like, and I texted in and I was like, please tell me what you've seen all year that have said to you that this Devils team can win more than 3 games in a row. They have not done it since December of 2023 at the beginning of the year. So they have yet to show it. They haven't been showing it. Yes, their play's been better, but they can't consistently put 3 wins in a row. They can't put a point streak together. They're getting help. That's how they're staying in this. They're not taking it, because if they were able to take it, they would have won the games they should have won and been in a playoff position right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have to change in this offseason. And, they've got people in the locker room with letters on their jerseys for a reason. They're going to have to figure it out. That's why you have a letter on your shirt. I mean, the upper management has to do some things too, but there's a lot of things that have to happen in this offseason for this team to be successful next year. And it'll be interesting to see what changes are made in the offseason, because you are going to give up something significant for a number one goalie. And there's just it's been a tough season. If you're a Devils fan, it's been a tough season to watch after what we saw last year.
It is. I mean, look, the result against the Rangers is what the result is. But if you're a Devils fan, you have to be happy, at least with their ability to stand up for each other finally, because, I believe it was Siegenthaler, I forget who the defenseman was, that took a cross check from behind. Dawson Mercer came in, got 2 minutes for instigating, and another fight happened with Will Cooley. So, look, that's a good sign. That's a great sign. But, again, too little, too late. Reactionary. Where was this at the beginning of the year when Nico was getting beat up, where Jack Hughes was getting beat up? Like, they needed to fix this, and they haven't fixed it. And I agree. It starts with the guys in the room. It starts with the guys, in management. What where do you address the need first? Obviously, we all know they need that number one goalie. But what other fixes can there be for this team to start to have success again? Because that's a tough question to answer right now, I think.
It's a tough question to answer, but you've got to get some physicality on the lines. Somebody that's going to be playing a regular shift. I mean, I was kind of hoping at the trade deadline the Devils might go back after somebody like Pat Maroon, who has done well. He's won the Stanley Cup a bunch of times, but they really have got to figure some stuff out in this offseason, because a lot of people, and I was one of them, had them pick as cup favorites, and they're going to be playing golf in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, they are. They're going to be playing golf, and look, they're going to play out the season, and they have some tough games here, and maybe they can play some spoilers. But New Jersey season, massive disappointment. But fight night at the Garden was reminiscent of March 19th, 2012. The same thing happened. Line brawl, Tortorella and DeBoer going at it. You saw Green and Laviolette going after it. Yes, it's an emotional game. Again, I agree with Travis Green. Why does Peter Laviolette have to be so upset? He shouldn't be, because everybody expected this to happen. Now, some people are saying, "Oh, nobody saw this coming. Nobody should have expected this. We didn't expect the line brawl." You kind of did, because we know what these rivals are. So yes, it was different. It was very interesting. It draws headlines when it happens. Is it bad for the game? No. We know what fighting and CT and all this stuff is, but sometimes this stuff has to happen.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where if you haven't played the game, I noticed some of the comments are from people that maybe haven't played. There's no way, if you play the game and you follow the NHL, that you didn't think this was going to happen last night. Because if you didn't think it was going to happen, then maybe you should follow a different sport, because it was pretty obvious it was going to happen. And as I said a few moments ago, to me, and I know this is going to sound silly, but it was actually more important that they showed up last night than the fact that they won or lost that game, because the Devils fan base is pissed.
Yes, they are. They are. They needed this team to show up. They needed somebody to drop the mitts, and it happened. And we got the heavyweight tilt, and we're going to see what Tom Fitzgerald is, because I agree with you. I think the clock is ticking on if he's going to remain the general manager. I think he gets this offseason, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, and again, I know a lot of people disagree with me. I was in some forums this morning. I don't know how you don't think that the general manager is accountable to some extent in this situation, because I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but we've talked about how everybody knew they needed a goalie, they needed to be better defensively, and they needed a physical presence. They got none of that till the end of the season. Well, it was far too late, and that's what a GM does. You address the team's needs. He didn't do it. Yes, he did some great stuff in the last offseason with, Timo Meier and Andre Palat, who, do you want to say that they're coming on now and it doesn't matter? I mean, that's kind of...
You could say that. You could say that.
Okay.
But then you can also make the argument and say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe Travis Green comes in. Why isn't he suggesting this stuff to Lindy Ruff earlier as an assistant to move Meier around when he's healthy, put him in the right situations? Again, a lot of this stuff reactionary, because the coach should have been fired before he was fired. I'm not saying the same result's going to happen. I'm not saying they're going to be in the playoffs. But, again, it's too many reactionary moves.
Not only too many reactionary moves, but I think some of the wrong moves. I mean, I think a lot of fans believe that Andrew Brunette was going to be the next Devils coach.
Yep.
He goes to Nashville, and I got into this with a couple of people this morning, and the Devils interviewed some other coaches prior to hiring Lindy Ruff, and they did not want to pay them. That's not some fallacy. That's stuff that's out there, and people are verifying that, okay?
Right.
You went on the cheap, and I'm not denigrating Lindy Ruff at all, but you didn't get a Laviolette, you didn't get a Gerard Gallant, you didn't get some of the other coaches. And right now, in my opinion, he needs to get this right.
Yeah.
The franchise needs to get this next coaching hire right, because you're already paying Lindy Ruff to not coach the team now after getting his extension. If you get rid of Tom Fitzgerald, you're going to be paying him after he gets his extension. So, at what point? I mean, really, to me, a lot of this comes on the people above Tom Fitzgerald, because someone's got to come down and say, dude, what are you guys doing down there? Because whatever you're doing, it's not working.
No, it's not. Not this season. And again, injuries aside, because every team goes through injuries, you didn't address areas in need that you needed to address to help this team succeed. And that's why we're seeing the results that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason in New Jersey. But again, you're right. Fight at the Garden last night, and it was an interesting game.
It was an interesting game, right? And for anybody who said, "Oh, the Devils were in the playoff mix," they weren't, because it came down in the Eastern Conference. We're looking at it. You say to yourself, "Okay, who's there?" Well, it's Philadelphia and Washington and the Islanders and Detroit. Those are the teams that are really battling. Pittsburgh's kind of back in the mix with their point streak. Philly got that important point against the Islanders. Fedotov is over. We're going to see if he continues to play. And I love what John Tortorella is saying. Like, he takes the blame for some of this, but he also is calling out some of his players that say, "Hey, you may not be, we are here for a reason. And if you don't have it, you don't have it, but you got to find it." And I love what Torts brings to the team, because it's accountability, it's structure. You got to play a certain way. And you look, Washington's doing things. What they're doing is amazing. They've hit a bit of a stumbling block. Detroit's right there. The Islanders could get back into the 8th spot. Again, if the Devils could have shown consistency at any point in this season, there was a believability they could have done it. There was no believability. So you're seeing Pittsburgh getting in there. Amazing what Pittsburgh's still doing. A big game against the result of Washington-Pittsburgh is going to be huge. The Islanders play a big game against Columbus. Philadelphia's got a big game. Tampa Bay got a big result over Toronto. They're 4 points within third. Florida struggled. But, the wild card race in the Eastern Conference is very interesting, because no one wants that 8th seed right now.
No one wants their 8th seed. And if you look at, the Devils are I believe they're in 7th place. My computer is not refreshing here. But, you've got Tampa Bay and Washington, and you've got Detroit, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo all ahead of New Jersey. And how about Buffalo kind of making this? I don't think they're going to make the playoffs either, but making kind of a late season surge to get in there. The more you look at this, whether you're an analyst or a fan, what a disappointing year this has been for New Jersey.
Absolutely, it is. You look at the standings, right? Washington 82, Detroit 82, Islanders 81, Pittsburgh 79, Philadelphia is at 83. So, look, the Atlantic's pretty much set. I think you got to get to 93, 95 points to get in there if you're the final wild card. A lot of big games, a lot of results that could change some things right now. Because, Detroit doesn't play Thursday night, but they play Friday and against the Rangers at home. So that's a big game for them, pending results of, Thursday night's game. And, a lot of things can happen. Again, when you circle the Pittsburgh, there's a reason why, and everybody harps on this. There's a reason why Crosby and Ovechkin were always featured on national games. It's because of nights like this when they play against each other with things on the line. Like, if Pittsburgh wins, they still have a shot at this thing. Some miracle that they're still around and kicking tires on this thing. Washington's kind of fading a little bit, but the fact of the matter is that these two guys are still around is really good.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting end to the season to see who gets in there, because Washington right now with that second spot, they've got 82 points. Detroit's got 82 points, and then the Islanders and Pittsburgh nipping on their heels with 81 points and 79 points respectively. And again, the Red Wings, another team that nobody had picked as a playoff team. Look at the impact that Patrick Kane being on that team has done this year. He has put that team on his back, and a great story in Motown, but a great end of the season, I think, is what we've got coming up. It's going to be interesting to see who ends up where.
Yeah, who do you think gets in? Who do you think gets that last spot?
I think the Red Wings get it.
Dude, now who finishes third in the Metro? Does Philly stay there, or does Washington figure out a way? Or is it the Islanders or somebody else?
So let me just address each one of those teams. Alex Ovechkin, I don't know how you could count him out, because since he scores goals in bunches. He had a slow start, been coming on like gangbusters. And then you look at the Flyers. Look what John Tortorella has done there. And then what was the third team when we talked about Detroit?
We talked about Detroit. I said the Islanders, Flyers, Caps, if you want to throw Pens in there too.
Right. And anytime you've got a Lou Lamoriello-led team, anything's possible. But I like the Red Wings just because of the way it's like a feel-good story for the NHL. Like, that franchise has had a couple of tough years, and now they're back, and Patrick Kane is leading the charge. I'm wondering, I mean, I don't know if he was healthy at that point, but can you imagine where Detroit might have been if they had him for the whole season?
Right, exactly. They could have maybe locked themselves into a playoff spot, and that's what we need. That's what you needed to see. Now you look at it, you say to yourself, okay, we look at the bottom, then you look at the middle. Who do you think? Because I have my own opinion on it, but who do you think is the best team in the Eastern Conference right now?
Boy, that's a tough one. The best team in the Eastern Conference right now, I think, might be the New York Rangers.
I was going to say Carolina, just because of what they have with Jake Getzel and Seth Jarvis and Natchez, and the goaltending of Freddie Anderson back and Kochetkov. Look, the Rangers isn't a wrong answer. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. It's an opinion, but I think if you looked at it, I think Carolina, to me, if they can get the goal scoring that they need in the playoffs, I think they're going to be a team that you're not going to want to play. I'll tell you that right now.
I'll tell you another team that I would not want to play in the playoffs, and they just seem to just start ramping it up come playoff time, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're just here. Here they are again. It's playoff time, and here they are playing, on all cylinders. Just I wouldn't want to play them either.
Neither would I. Vasilevsky 8-1-1 in his last 10. Kucherov took over the Art Ross Trophy race again. He's in the mix for MVP. Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, another 40-goal season. Defense with Hedman. The Dumba and Duclair filled in nicely. John Cooper doesn't get enough of credit as a head coach in this league. The Lightning are a team for me that you don't want to play in the playoffs. And, Toronto found out the hard way that if you don't show up against them, they're going to burn you. And I wouldn't want to play Tampa. And whoever plays them in the first round is going to have a tough matchup because of that goaltender who is healthy.
And again, for some of those teams, there's so much added pressure because of past failures. Going into the playoffs is a stressful time anyway. But I mean, Toronto really has to have a good run to have something significant not happen up there in the offseason. They've got their big four. They really need to make it to the second round or higher, or they're going to
Boston too's got expectations.
Yeah, and just because they had such a terrible ending last year, they're going to have to step up too. And with both of those teams, whether it's Boston or Toronto, an early exit, I think you could see some significant changes in both of those teams if that happens.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think Boston's roster is going to be different anyway. I think just they're going to move on from one of their goaltenders, and that's going to be that on the back end. And what other changes they make, who knows? Maybe they finally get that number one center that they need. But there's definitely some expectations, though. I feel like Boston's flying under the radar a little bit this year. Maybe not as much expectations because no one really knows what they are.
I think you're right. The only thing is after the terrible ending to last year's season at the hand of the Panthers, they're back. They're one of the best teams in the league. And again, so are like, okay, so maybe last year's a fluke. They didn't really do a ton of stuff at the deadline. And so again, if they have a collapse or they don't make it out of the first round, is there some pressure on Don Sweeney for not doing that, not getting that number one center? Because the Pavel Zacha experiment as number one center really hasn't worked. I've always thought of him, even when he was with New Jersey, I always thought of him as like his ceiling as being like a 55 to 65 point player. And I think that's what we're seeing.
I think that's what we're seeing too. And I think he's more of a winger than he is a center.
Right.
But again, we're going to see what happens in the East. Over to the West. Look, the Kings got 5 points up on St. Louis. It's St. Louis and LA for the final spot in the Western Conference. And that's about it. Vegas is a team like Tampa. They're turning it on at the right time, right? They're getting healthier. They're figuring out ways to win, and their offense is coming alive. And they're a team you don't want to play in the playoffs like Nashville is. And like I said, it's a 2-horse race in the West. Meanwhile, it's a multiple horse race in the East. But to me, it's LA and St. Louis, and I think LA finds a way to get in.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're 5 points back. The Kings have 89 points. The Blues have 84. Nashville is in the top spot with 90 points. I don't think St. Louis is going to be able to make up 5 points. Both of those teams have played 75 games, so not a lot of runway to make up 5 points.
No, not a lot of runway at all. And I just like LA's team. They got that big win. Let's see if they can back it up. If they get some help, then they can increase that lead a little bit, give themselves a little bit more breathing room. But the way Vegas is playing right now, Jack Eichel, Marcia Sill, Thomas Hurdle is going to be coming into that lineup. They're getting healthier. Again, like Tampa, okay, we've done it. We've been here before. We know how to play our best games. And here they are sitting in third place. Maybe they passed Edmonton, getting a second. Vancouver's got that top spot pretty much locked up in the Pacific. What a wild race for these divisions because nothing is settled.
No, nothing is settled. And again, Vancouver's another team that we were a little bit surprised. No one expected them to have a gangbuster season. I mean, 47, 21, and 8, 102 points. They've had a good year. And we alluded in the early part of the podcast today about how a coaching change made at the appropriate time can really make a difference. And look at what Edmonton has done since moving on from Jay Woodcroft earlier in the season. And they've got 95 points. And but if I had to pick one team in the Western Conference that I don't want to play in the playoffs, it's probably 1A and 1B. Number 1 would be Vegas, and number 2 would be Nashville.
Yeah, I think so too. And the way that both teams are playing, they have the goaltender, they know how to turn it on, they got that feel. But you look at a team like Dallas right now, and you see what they did against Edmonton. They blow the doors off of them. But the thing is with Dallas is they can look great one game, and then one game they could get blown out, and you're like, okay, what's this about?
Right.
But right now they seem to be playing at the right speed, and they're playing the right game. And Ottinger looks healthy, and Ottinger looks good. And they're getting balanced scoring. So many guys with multiple 20-goal seasons, guys in the 30s, Wyatt Johnson, you got Pavelski, Hintz, and like the list goes on of what Dallas is doing. They're playing a real good team game right now. And I love what Dallas brings because, they've been a cup favorite. Maybe now, I know people are still picking them, but I like Boston. They're kind of flying under the radar, and you may have to watch out for them right now.
Yeah, I mean, come playoff time, one player that I think hasn't really gotten enough credit this year. I want to get back to the New York Rangers for a second. I mean, obviously, they've got Shesterkin, who's an all-world goaltender. But how about the performance of Jonathan Quick this year? I mean,
that's what goaltending can do, right? Goaltending gets you there, and he's been a great backup, and he's earned a 1-year extension.
I mean, one can only imagine, and we talked during the offseason about either Quick or, Marc-Andre Fleury coming to New Jersey. I only wonder, what could have been had he come in earlier. I don't know. I'm a goaltending nut. I like looking at the stats and everything. And Quick has been everything as advertised and delivered. And again, you got to, even as a Devils fan, this is one of the things that drives me crazy sometimes is because you can still be a fan and recognize the accomplishments of the other teams. Because if you're a fan of the game, you got to tip your hat to the Rangers and what they've done with their team this year. They've got a very good team. Their goaltending is much better than the team that you and I follow. And so you got to say, listen, what they've done this year has worked, and they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs because if Shesterkin doesn't have a good game, Jonathan Quick is not really a slouch either. He's won the Cup 3 times.
Right, exactly. Now he didn't really play in Vegas. He's went to the Cup last year, but still he's got 2 Stanley Cups, so he understands that he's got 3 Stanley Cups. He's won 2 of them playing. He understands what it takes to play in the playoffs. And yeah, if Shesterkin struggles, you may have to go to Quick, and that's why you have the 2.
That either.
No, don't. I can't. I mean, look, he's proved me wrong all year. I didn't think it was going to be it wasn't going to work out. If he played more than that he played, the Rangers would have been in trouble. But again, Peter Laviolette, first year there. We're going to see what happens next year. Lafreniere's taking the next step playing with Artemi Panarin. Like these young guys, these young players put in the right situation are taking the right steps. You've seen it. Underrated signing in Colorado with Jonathan Drouin, Wyatt Johnston in Dallas. Cole Perfetti steps up for the Winnipeg Jets when they need it the most. So if you have your young players putting in the right situation and playing the right way, things are going to get done. And that's why the Rangers are in the position that they're in, not only because of their goaltending, but guys like Panarin who are in the Hart Trophy conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing the way guys step up come postseason time. But again, I mean, Quick is 17-5-2 with 2 shutouts, 2.54 goals against. That's a pretty darn good year for him.
Yeah, it is. Very good year for Jonathan Quick. Very surprising, too. I didn't think he was going to have 17 wins this year.
Big year for him and the Rangers. We'll see what happens come playoff time because goaltending wins championships. And
yes, it does. And so does good defense.
Yeah, well, we've got a ways to go before we have that here on the Jersey side, but the playoffs will be here before you know it, and it's gonna be exciting.
It's going to be exciting, and guys, be excited because we're on YouTube. The Full Press Hockey Podcast is there. We're up on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. A lot of big things coming here. Another great episode of the Full Press Hockey Podcast. I've been your host, Jim Biringer, Full Press Hockey, Bruce Zeman, Fox Media, NHL Analyst. Bruce, thanks so much for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me, Jim, and I look forward to talking with you again next week as we talk a little hockey.
Absolutely, guys. Check it out again on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Take care and enjoy the rest of the regular season. We'll be back again real soon.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.